and this is very common. I feel like I walk in this a lot. Is I have a standard that God should love me no matter what. But the moment that God violates that standard, he's on parole, and I question whether or not he's good. So welcome back to the Journey to Trust podcast. I'm glad that you decided to continue to listen. It's been a while since I put something out. I've kind of been in a funk creatively. But I have just released a video, Just Be, last track of the album, Come Home, Mr. Martinez. I finally put the visuals out to that. Nathan Nix did an amazing job. Shout out to him. And so I'm going to continue to try to put as much content as I possibly can out, given the circumstances and the crazy that everybody has to endure. But I'm just going to jump right into the intimacy talk again, leaving off where I left off in episode 6, right? So in episode 6, we went through principle 1, and I kind of just want to give a backdrop of principle 1, why principle 1 is important, why intimacy at all is important. In my journey, in my striving to understand God more deeply and understanding discipleship, life more deeply, I realized something, and God used my addiction, my weakness, my compulsion to, cope, watch porn, distract via Netflix or whatever the case is, entertainment, stress eating. He used those things to show me that the base problem that I have, the root issue that I have, is this longing for a deep connection with God, connection with other people. And when that's off center, when I don't feel that, and that loneliness starts to seep in and sink in, that's when a lot of those issues start to manifest. So I believe that God has wired me. He's wired humanity for deep relationship, or what I call intimacy. I see this in John 17:3. It says, and this is eternal life, that they know you, the one true God, and Jesus Christ whom you have sent. See, the know in the Greek there is an intimate knowing. It's the same know that is used for Adam knowing Eve for the first time. And that knowing is actually a sexual connotation. So there's this intimate root and base in salvation. And that's the base of our relationship with God. Is supposed to be intimacy. So intimacy has been the goal of my talks thus far. And I've been outlining intimacy steps that I just pull from recovery, right? And the first step that we have to walk through in order to be intimate people, to have intimate relationship with God and others, is I have to actually realize that I'm not God. I have to realize that I'm out of control, that I am powerless to control the tendency to do the wrong thing. Unless, and the reason why I believe this is the first step is because unless I actually realize how out of control I am, I can't actually operate within the space of reality. I'm operating under a paradigm that isn't true, that doesn't exist. If you want real relationship with somebody, you have to understand what really is happening, what really is going on. And the more control I think I have that I don't, the less opportunity I have for real, genuine, deep relationship. And so control can take many forms. So my playing God, it can take many forms. And because we're talking about relationship with God and other people, I wanted to list several examples of what playing God even looks like. Because you may be listening, you think, oh, well, this might not apply to me. I'm not really a controlling person or whatever have you. I'm going to list some things that actually do apply to me, and they may apply to you. So if you can relate, then you need to continue to listen. For example, control via criticism, shallow judgments, unwarranted advice, those kinds of things. That's control via criticism. And unwarranted advice may not sound like a controlling thing, but if somebody's sharing something with me and I interject with advice, I'm assuming the nature of their pain, their hurt, without fully listening. I'm actually assuming that they even wanted to hear my advice. And it's actually rather presumptuous and it's actually rather prideful to just interject and give advice where it's not asked for. The best thing someone can do to foster a relationship is actually support. And so the antithesis of judgment, the antithesis of unwarranted advice and fixing is listening, supporting. Supporting doesn't necessarily mean agreeing either. But let's move on along because I'm sure we'll get into that. Another form of control is ultimatums. If you do this, then I'll do this. And ultimatums are not the same as boundaries. A boundary is me communicating a value and allowing you to either accept that value or reject that value. And on the basis of that interaction, that engagement, we can either go deeper into intimacy or we further away. But a boundary is not an ultimatum. An ultimatum is an unhealthy wall. A boundary leaves a doorway. An ultimatum is literally me building a wall between you and I. And the only way that we can actually engage is if you enter into my space. You think like I think. And so that's an example of an ultimatum or controlling. So it's like having certain standards to operate within a family unit. If I'm a conservative evangelical who has a son who's gay and says he's homosexual, and I say, you know what, son, because you're gay, I don't want to have any dealings with you, that's an ultimatum. Within the context of boundaries, a healthy boundary says, I actually value heterosexual relationship, but I don't reject you. That's different. An ultimatum says you can't engage. A boundary says we can continue to engage, but you have to understand my value. And a healthy interaction with something like that would be, no, I see that you're different than me. And I have values in other spaces, but I can continue to completely accept you. We can continue to interact. We can continue to talk. But I'm never going to accept that lifestyle as a valid lifestyle. But I'm not going to love you any different. And if, I have a daughter, if that's the life she chooses to accept and walk, I'm going to love her no matter what she prescribes to. I'm just going to love her. But our intimacy is going to be hindered if our values are different. So another is control via rewards. So it's relationship based on rewards. I'm okay with you as long as you bring value to the relationship. That's a form of control. That's me trying to play God. I'm not accepting you as you are. I'm only accepting you for what you can give me. So something like when someone stops bringing value to the relationship, I distance myself. I cut them off. That could be me mocking them, avoiding them, criticizing them, or sometimes it's inverted. It's me helping them to show that I'm superior. So there's a different distancing that's happening, right? So either way, it's control. It's me trying to be something that I'm not. It's me trying to exercise God. Another standard is control via unequal standards, or is hypocrisy. That's like me telling Jill, I can have opposite sex friends and you can't, which is completely unfair. That's me trying to control the way that she lives and who she interacts with. It's also completely hypocritical. So unequal standards. A more practical unequal standard for somebody that's a Christian is I have a standard, and this is very common. I feel like I walk in this a lot, is I have a standard that God should love me no matter what. But the moment that God violates that standard, he's on parole, and I question whether or not he's good. So that's control via unequal standards. It's hypocritical. Another form of control, you may not think it, but is unforgiveness or resentment. It's me trying to control my negative emotions, and in an unhealthy way, trying to get somebody to experience my negative emotions. So unforgiveness is said to be a poison that I drink in hopes that the other person dies. And unforgiveness doesn't help us. It's only going to lead us to greater measures of depression and anxiety. Ultimately, unforgiveness is me trying to play God. It's me trying to be judge of another person. And it's not taking the way of the cross. So another example of control, image control or performance-based approval. It's me trying to appear successful or put together. Me trying to appear like something that I'm not. Associating with people on the basis of their performance. So trying to align myself with people that are as successful as me or make as much money as me. This is image control. I try to look a certain way, essentially trying to earn right relationship with God by behaving well. That's a form of image control. It's also kind of tied in with the control via rewards, right? Relationship based on rewards. But the last one that I wanted to get to, and we'll move on, is stuffing or suppressing emotions and pain. This is another measure of control, right? And it's kind of connected to unforgiveness, but stuffing and suppressing emotions and pain is a form of control. It's me trying to play God. It's numbing my emotions through pleasure. It's not dealing with my emotions. It's not processing my emotions. It can be, but stuffing. And the way that I stuff is pleasure. Pleasure is one of my main ways that I stuff. One of the main ways. Another one is work. It's not been my go-to, but sometimes I can fall into that too. Another one is just not allowing certain emotions to surface. Like when I feel like crying or I feel like being emotional and I just don't show weakness. That's a form of control. That's not letting yourself be the you that God has created you to be. And what's interesting is you can't selectively numb. The emotions that you try to suppress, the negative emotions you try to suppress is always a positive emotion that you by default also suppress. So you can't put down depression. You can't put down anxiety without suppressing joy and happiness, because those emotions are inextricably connected. We're not supposed to suppress our emotions. We're supposed to feel our emotions, process our emotions in healthy ways. But me trying to be the God of my emotions and not taking them before God and asking God what He would what He would do with my emotions, that's control. Another form of suppressing emotions is avoiding confrontation. Avoiding discussion on sensitive topics or dominating conversations to not allow somebody to express their opinions, right? So there's all kinds of forms of control that I can put out there, but they're all forms of me essentially trying to play God. And so if I'm trying to play God and I'm walking in this space where I'm trying to play God, there's no possible way I can have deep relationship with someone else, because I'm trying to be something that I'm not. I'm not living in the realm of reality. Intimacy has to be lived on the basis of reality. Otherwise, it's not intimacy. It's a mirage, right? I have to accept responsibility for what is in my control and nothing more than what's in my control. And these days, what I've concluded is I only have control over really two things. I can have control over my thoughts and how long they stay there, and I have control over how I respond to those thoughts. So it's thoughts and actions. And when I recognize that there is somebody outside of my control that is in control, I have to identify who that person is. I have to identify and establish reality. If I'm not in control and somebody else is, unless I actually am operating in the parameter of who is in control, I'm not actually going to be living the life that I'm designed for, because I have a designer. I have to calibrate. I have to get right back on track with how I'm made, who made me, and I have to sync up to the right foundation, right? Which is why it's so important to identify who that God is. It can't be any God.